Welcome to Community Committee. I'll just take you through a bit of housekeeping. In order to assist the process, could please everyone ensure that their mobile phones are either switched off or on silent mode. Also, I'd like to remind everyone present that the meeting will be filmed by the Council and broadcast live on the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. So if you are in the chamber, it's possible the cameras will capture your image, and by your presence you are deemed to consent to be filmed and to the use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting or training purposes. As the chairman of the meeting, I can at my discretion terminate or suspend filming if, in my opinion, continuing to do so would prejudice the proceedings of the meeting, or if I consider that continued filming might infringe the rights of any individual or breach any statutory provision. Thank you. Okay, so we go straight into the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies have been received from Councillor Flagg, Councillor Hallam and Councillor Mrs Spittle.
Thank you very much.
Move you called Councillor Leslie Dedman if she doesn't turn up.
Well, we understand she may be running late, but yeah. Okay, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any interest they wish to declare? No or none. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. They're on pages 7 to 10. Are you happy that I confirm these are a correct record of the minutes of the last meeting?
So seconded.
All those in favour? Thank you very much. Item 4, statement of common ground for Dorset. Simon, this has been before us last time at the last meeting. I'm sure Simon will explain why it's here again.
Yes, Chairman, I don't propose to introduce this report formally because it was, as the Chairman has said, at your November meeting. The only reason for bringing it back is a slight technicality that we took this for information purposes to the November meeting, and also at that meeting just discussed and agreed a mechanism for signing this the statement of common ground, because it's a document that requires a formal signature from the council. But having taken a quick bit of legal advice, because that meeting wasn't expressly asked to sign the document, we've brought it back effectively to be signed or for authorisation to sign at this meeting. The only one point I want to make, Chairman, is really this statement of common ground going through committee processes across Dorset is primarily for the benefit of Purbeck District Council, because they intend to submit their local plan to the Secretary of State this Friday, and obviously will be programming a local plan examination in the next few weeks, and therefore a statement of common ground is required for that examination. This doesn't have any particular impact on our own Christchurch local plan review, or indeed any other current local plan review in Dorset, and I'd imagine there will be further iterations of this document before we ever get to examination stage for those. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the officer at all? I mean, yes.
Just hope those set out, Chairman.
Oh, okay. I just wondered if there were any questions, but if there are none, no, you're happy to propose it. So really, all we're doing really is changing the wording in item 2 that we're authorised to sign rather than recognised to sign, as was in the previous minutes. So do I have a seconder? Oh.
Happy to second.
All those in favour? Thank you very much. Okay. Right. Okay, item 5, community safety report. Sure.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Good evening. This report really is in 2 parts. It has already been to the scrutiny committee. The 2 parts are essentially an annual report on the community safety within the borough, which included statistics from Dorset Police, and the second part relates to the recommending to full council of the adoption of the 3 strategies as set out in the appendices. If I take the the first part first. The scrutiny committee are designated the scrutiny function under crime and disorder overview and scrutiny regulation. So it's a legal requirement that the council reviews the community safety aspects and functions within the area. And as I say, the scrutiny committee has been designated that particular function. As part of that, each year they are presented with an annual report on the community safety function and activity, and that includes a report by Dorset Police on crime stats, and the committee sort of questioned the inspector who was at that meeting in November, and a copy of the minute is set out in the report before you tonight that you can see. The second part relates to the 3 strategies, as I mentioned. These are pan-Dorset strategies, and they've been agreed through the community safety partnership that exists. And they operate across the county, and the district and borough councils have been asked to adopt the same strategies, obviously for consistency and transparency in relation to the functions that are under them. I'm happy to take any questions, although I will say I'm not an expert on the subject matter of the 3 strategies, but if there are particular questions and I can't respond, I can always go away and ask the relevant public health or other contacts.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on this item for the officer? Yes, Councillor Bungay.
I'm assuming that although we are party to this, once the 2 new unitaries come into being, it will be an automatic have to sign up to this again, because our existence won't be there. So it'll still be in existence, but the 2 new authorities will have to re-sign up to it.
Yes, Councillor. Essentially, the strategies will continue in force, so the new council won't automatically have to resolve to adopt them. That adoption will carry over, but obviously there will, I'm sure, be discussion in due course about the strategies maybe being amended to reflect the new structures that exist.
Are there any further questions for the officer on this? Okay, in that case we'll go into debate. Does anybody wish to start this? Nick?
Just propose it as set out, Chairman.
You're happy to propose it. We've got the recommendation is we're noting the report, and then we're recommending to full council the adoption of the 3 strategies. That's what it is. So you're happy?
Yep, happy.
Do I have a seconder for that? Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Hall. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Excellent. For the next item, we need Officer David Barnes. Do we know where he is?
I have to message him, but he's
Sorry?
inactive on the system. I've messaged him.
You have? Right. What would be normal procedure now then? Should we move on further down?
I can set
Well, he's doing the homeless strategy as well.
Yes.
Right. Are we able to pause for a moment while we find him? I think we will have to do that. We've probably got through this a little quicker than he thought. Right. Thank you very much, everybody, for just that small pause. Okay, we are now on item 6, the Country Park update. David Barnes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening, members. You'll see from the report, I've laid it out in the format in which Council asked the committee to look at 3 specific issues, and I'm going to comment on those each in turn. The first is community engagement, so an update on that. It's going very well. I'll come on to some of the details in a second. You'll have seen at paragraph 3.1 that we've got a dedicated web page which has got a number of documents in there. One of those is a Q&A, question and answer sheet, and rather helpfully, as we've been engaging with various community groups and individuals, questions that they have posed and we've been able to answer, we're refreshing the Q&A sheet. So I don't know if members have had a chance to look at that, but it looks different today than it looked yesterday because we've been able to add more to it. And we're really grateful to the community from that point of view, because it's really helped to fill gaps in understanding and answer some of the questions that people raised. In terms of the survey, the online survey, which is ongoing, and we're going to leave that running, we've had 140 responses thus far, so that's good going. 95% of those responses are from people over 40, so we want to try and do a little bit more work in terms of engaging families and younger people in particular. It just seems to be a little bit too loaded in favour of older people, shall we say. And in terms of some of the sort of key facts, the people that sort of currently use the area, 2/3 of them currently access the area by foot, which is something that I think we commented on previously. The types of activities that seem to be coming through strongly as what people would prefer: walking, wildlife spotting, viewpoints, picnicking, things like that. Things like play park, play facilities is a bit low down on the list, but that's probably reflective of the fact that, as I say, the respondents to date have been in the sort of older age group category, so we want to try and get a little bit of balance of view there. In terms of additional facilities, again, a lot of comments about things being sort of closer to nature, so more bird boxes, bat boxes, and educational information, which has been really helpful, because not only have people said that, you know, we would like some more bird boxes, there'll be some suggestions as to where they might go, and that's been helpful in terms of discussions with the countryside team. And then finally, in terms of landscape, what changes to the overall landscape do people want? Quite sort of strong arguments in favour, or quite strong views on: can we have more wildflowers? Can we have more sort of wild areas? Can we have some viewpoints? I think opening up the golf course means that we've got the potential to install a new viewpoint or two with a view over the harbour that we haven't been able to have before. But also the formal and informal paths, pond, woodland and meadow. So all of those things very helpful, and I think are in tune with, you know, what we've been saying all along should be the major focus for the park. It's, you know, a green space to be enjoyed, not overly commercialised, and with a very sort of close connection to nature. Paragraph 3.3, we've contacted over 30 community and interest groups. Some very helpful discussions and some good ideas. Some concerns here and there, but nothing that we put in the negative category. Where those concerns have come across, they've been put across in a positive way. Thus far, the team have had meetings with the Friends of Stampit Marsh, the Christchurch Harbour and Ornithological Group, the CCA, the Wildlife Trust and those being the sort of 4 key. There's a meeting coming up shortly with the Gladstone Close residents group, and you'll see in the paragraph that there are 2 drop-in sessions arranged for the 26th of January and the 8th of February, where the team want to take community groups round to have a look at the proposals actually on the ground, and again to get some ideas and feedback, and a number of those 30 have taken up that invitation. So, as we said previously, Madam Chairman, the community engagement is an ongoing process, and I think we're really pleased with the response that we've had thus far, and we hope that can continue. The second area that I just want to move on to is the support from Natural England. Members will have already received a copy of the advice, and as I say, that was one of the requirements from Council, that we received that advice. As I've set out in the report, there's nothing there that is considered to be problematic in terms of developing the proposals, and I think a lot of what the Natural England says is in tune with what the community is saying. So there are no sort of harsh disagreements, and any sort of slight differences of opinion are sort of fairly minor. So I'm encouraged by that I think everybody appears to be in the same place. I know the issue of parking was raised previously, and you'll see that at Natural England there's no requirement for us to provide any additional free parking. Natural England understands that the leisure centre and civic offices car parks are amenity car parks and can continue as such, but they've asked us to give some consideration going forward. And at 3.7, the final sentence there is, I think what your officers are advising you is that until patterns and use and demand are established, it probably wouldn't be sensible to adopt any particular alternative proposal on parking at this time. We need to see what the use is like. There are tools that we can use, and I've mentioned those at paragraph 3.7 in particular. There was one point which has come through a little bit more strongly than the others, which is the concern about the Stampit car park at the moment, which is currently free, and the desire from the feedback that we've had to maintain that as a free car park. And I've got a proposal or a suggestion for that sort of later on in the report as how we would deal with it. Item 3.8 and 3.9, what we've explained there is in terms of the planning application, which was the original proposal, further discussion with Natural England and with our legal advisor, is basically what we're saying is a better way of actually preserving the area's public open space is not to go through with a change of use planning application, but instead to put an agreement in place with Natural England. That is what they would like. They do not require a change of planning use. And I think some of the concerns we've had coming back from people is that actually we want to preserve this area as public open space. So putting an agreement in place does that. The other thing that an agreement does is that it would need to include what I would call an in perpetuity clause. So, for example, when we agree with Section 106 agreements with Natural England, their definition of in perpetuity is a minimum of 80 years. So we would be enshrining in an agreement that space would be kept as a SANG and by default as public open space for a minimum of 80 years. Now, if you compare that to a planning change of use, you can reverse a planning change of use, but an agreement is an actionable document. So if either party reneges on it, then you'll automatically get action by the other, and that's obviously as a document would be something which would novate to the new local authority. So it probably has a stronger status in terms of preserving the area as we would want to than a change of planning use. There is a recommendation about that in the report, and I hope that members will support that. And just sort of linking back to the previous point about parking, I think it's probably possible within that agreement to safeguard the free parking is to have a specific reference to the free parking in that agreement. So those concerns that have been raised, we can actually enshrine it in what will basically be a management agreement, but having a legal status. So I hope members will understand that we've kind of moved on from where we were, and there's actually a better solution to preserving the area than we'd originally anticipated. And finally, a few other matters. The concerns raised about methane, we've looked at those again. We've had the consultant that has done work for us on the past look through all the records, and assurance has been given that minimal or extremely low risk. The only problems that we have in methane, as I've explained in the report, is where it's allowed to build up under a hard surface, a non-permeable surface. So that's why in the past we've vented the car park. Obviously, methane seeps out very, very, very slowly through earth. So minimal risk there. Availability of toilets. I know that's an issue that's been raised on more than one occasion, and the advice from officers here is that because we don't know precisely what the usage will be of the park, we're not in the position at this present time to determine whether additional toilet facilities will be needed or not. So the suggestion here is that we keep that matter under review. I think the other point to note here is that Natural England don't propose additional toilets. In fact, in areas used as sang, they don't really advocate it. But irrespective of that, I've asked the officers to do some work on it, to look at where we might locate additional toilet facilities if we need. And what I've got here, just to evidence the fact that we've been having a close look at it, is some pictures of what you would call toilet pods. Those are structures, and I'll hand one round to go that way and one the other. And they are sort of additional structures that you would add on to an existing building on the outside, so that although at the moment we can't be certain whether or not we'll need extra toilets or not, I thought it probably best to do some work on it so that we can be in the position of saying, well, okay, we could put some toilets here or we could put some toilets there. And as I say, there's a range of designs. Some of them are a bit out of the wild and wacky school of architecture, but I'm not an expert in toilets, Madam Chairman. In terms of the implementation arrangements, the golf course was closed and opened, and the area was opened up to the public on the 1st of January. The holes were filled in, obviously, so and a health and safety risk assessment was done. So any works that were needed to be done at that time were done. The staff at Two Rivers Meet and the countryside team have kept a close watch on the area. We haven't had any sort of problems at all, and so it's quietly opened up to greater public use without sort of any consternation or alarm. And obviously we hope that will continue. And finally, from my point of view, just one note of apology. One of the appendices was supposed to be a Gantt chart which just sort of charts what the work going forward, and we inadvertently copied the wrong document, which was just the sketch plan of the area. So I think Nikki has circulated a revised copy of the Gantt chart. What I would also propose, just to make sure that we don't forget it, is to put in a specific issue about the work that we're doing on toilets, because it isn't recorded in the Gantt chart at the moment, and I think it will be useful and give some reassurance to members if we put that in there. So sorry, it's been a bit of a sort of long trawl through, but obviously there were quite a number of questions raised by members previously, and I wanted to make sure I give you a full answer on all the points that Council wanted the committee to look into. So happy to take questions, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for the officer? Councillor Dedman.
Sorry, thank you, Chairman. It's about the management agreement. Two things, really. They can be set aside, can't they, at some point, if both parties are willing, which is I know. But I'm concerned about with whom the management agreement will be, because if this council is no longer here, it's no good us agreeing something and then it being overtaken by circumstance. So can you reassure me on that?
Yes, through you, Madam Chairman. We have lots of agreements at the moment that are between Christchurch Borough Council and a third party. Those agreements novate to the new council. It's in one of the the legal orders. So I'm confident that point will be dealt with adequately.
You want to have a follow-up?
It wasn't a follow-up to that. It was only about the lavatories that I thought you said that people had put down as a preference picnic areas. So how high did that come up on the list? It was about third or fourth, wasn't it?
Yes, it comes facilities, bird boxes, bat boxes, educational information. I think there were another 3 or 4, and I think toilets was amongst those. Those are the things that are starting to come forward. But we'll obviously keep an eye on it because that could change.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I'd like to ask Mr. Barnes, first of all, on 3.9 that we now don't need planning, but you did say that you had an agreement with Natural England, or would be better to have an agreement with Natural England. Well, can I go then back to the recommendation, because you've got approval of the proposal, and I think in the letter which you kindly had forwarded that they said we want a binding agreement, and I do think that we should have a binding committed agreement to the management plan, and also at the end, in perpetuity with Natural England. I think they should be included in that. I'm very happy with your support for keeping the car park free, so if that could be added, Madam Chairman, I'd be very pleased with that.
I can give a resounding yes. That is exactly what we intend for Councillor Hall.
So if we're going to add anything in there, we're going to have to get the wording right. But before we just come to that then, is there any further questions for the officer on this? No? Okay. So in that case, Councillor Hall, if we're going into debate, are you then going to make a proposal to put in the word binding or whatever you said? And can we hear what you're saying, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll do my very best. I think approve the proposal for a binding commitment for the management agreement for the park, and preferably a way of preserving the area in public open space in perpetuity with Natural England. So I think Natural England need to be involved. And the second one is to safeguard the free parking at the Stampit Recreation Ground, or whatever Mr. Barnes suggests.
Come back in.
Yeah, I'm happy. Yeah, I don't think there's a problem with inserting the word binding, and I think it's eminently sensible to put in Natural England. There will be a lot of clauses within that agreement, so rather than having a specific recommendation on the parking, I think that it would just form part of the agreement. What you could say is and ensure that free parking at Stampit Recreation Ground is included as a clause within the agreement. That might be a better way of saying it. Otherwise, you could have lots of other clauses. You'd end up with your
so what you're saying is don't make it
huge.
number 3.
Yeah.
Just add it onto number 2,
that
which
might
is
be
more
better.
sensible. Otherwise, you would end up, as you say, with lots of different items coming forward. Right.
Very happy with that recommendation from Mr. Barnes.
I think there is further debate now, so can we just hold fire on it? Right. Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. It's more a question. Can we actually do that with the car parking? I mean, we're going into the unitary. Will they accept it? Will it have to be accepted? Is it permanent?
Yeah, I believe so, through you, Madam Chairman, because it's not as if there is any moratorium at the moment on the council entering into agreements. I don't think if anybody was to ask the man in the street, including the man in the street in Bournemouth or Poole, is a new park a good idea? Most people, most sensible people would say yes. So no, I don't think there's anything that bars us from morally or legally doing it, and I say let's get on and do it.
Thank you, Chairman. It was the legal side I was worried.
That's fine. Councillor Bungay, you wanted to come in.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm glad to see that we are looking at the toilet option, because I went on a walkabout with residents with Alan Ottaway, and to be fair, most of them were pretty anti when we started the whole business. By the time we'd finished walking round the area, they had sort of swung into being more or less fully endorsing it. But the big questions that they raised were car parking and toilets, because they said without any doubt, if I come here with my family on a picnic, for me to get from down the Stampit end to a toilet with a young child is not acceptable. So I probably wouldn't use it for a picnic at all unless I could get somewhere near Two Rivers Mead. So that was the only stumbling blocks, really. That and the car parking were the only issues they raised. But by the end of the walk, apart from those two issues, they were happy with the principle in everything else. So it's good to hear that the officers are actually looking at it. The only concern I have is that without any commitment to it, we know that Bournemouth and Poole are busy closing toilets, that it would, if we find we need it, it will never happen anyway. And that could lead to lack of use of the park in the longer term, apart from dog walkers and twitchers watching birds. But for families, it might not be usable in a longer term. That's all.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dedman?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I must say toilets are on my mind this evening. For exactly the same reason that when you take a family, which is what I said to Mr. Barnes earlier, when you do take a family for a picnic, they all drink squash and then they all need to go to the toilet. And if you have got to go a long way, it's very difficult. And I would prefer to see, with this plan, the toilets being costed in and a site found for them very early on, rather than just, perhaps we'll do it if people want it. Because I think it's the chicken and the egg that I think people won't go because they know there is no toilet facility. And I know sangs don't have toilets, but then sangs are a whole different animal and they sometimes appear and disappear. But if we want a country park to be used in perpetuity, this 80 years, I think that in 80 years' time, people will be thinking, well, fancy not putting a lavatory in. So that's my really only hesitation, and otherwise I think it's a very good scheme. I'm very pleased about the free parking in Stampit. I wish we could have it at Steamer Point and other places, but apparently it's historic for Stampit and jolly good. So no, I'm totally in favour. I endorse it, apart from the lavatories, which I would like to see earlier.
Right, can I just come back on that then? When we do this management plan that is going to be put together by officers, is there any way of putting something in there that that it's considered they could be necessary, and that something in there that looks at this, that in the future or as part of it there is likely to be some toilets? Is there anything we can do within the management plan? That's what I think I'm coming.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm not so sure that we could insert something in the management plan, because as I said earlier, that Natural England aren't really in favour of putting additional toilets in. But what I did say earlier was that we can make sure that our own implementation plan, which the Gantt chart that we set out earlier, includes a specific reference to that. Officers at the moment are looking at suitable locations, and there's some discussions going to be needed with owners of other properties towards the Stampit end to see whether or not they would give permission for us to bolt a pod onto the end of the building, for example. And we're looking at other locations as well. So I'd like to be in the position of being able to identify a location as soon as we possibly can. But as I say, if we put something, I don't think it's something that Natural England would sign up to. We put it in the management agreement. I think it's something that we have to do. And as I say, this is why I've asked officers to, as a matter of, I don't want to use the word urgency, we're talking about toilets, but you know what I mean, as a matter of urgency to sort of look at it and see if they can identify a suitable location or locations.
So it is sort of happening. Councillor Bungay, you wanted to come back on it.
Yes, it was just a thought that, there are other activities that take place there. There's the bonfire night, there's car boot sales, and I mean, on car boot sales, the Scout Hut there, out of the kindness of their heart, make their toilets available to the public, because you know, the car boot people can be there from 7 in the morning till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and they need toilets. So with the other activities as well, it's not just the picnicking people we're hoping to encourage. There are other activities happening down there that could look at on those facilities as a very useful addition.
Yeah, I think it is clear though that the officers are looking at this, actively looking at this. They're looking at what could be put there, and you've seen some photos and locations as well. So I think really we will have to go with that they are really looking at this, and they do have an intention to ensure that this facility is provided.
Yes, Madam Chairman, if I just add one final point, I think Councillor Bungay has cracked the code of what I was saying earlier in terms of some of the alternative locations, and that's one of the discussions that we're hoping to have, because that is probably quite a good location. But there are probably others as well, and we want to make sure that we find whatever is most suitable.
Okay. Right, Councillor Hall is indicating you want to speak.
Just to come back and ask Mr. Barnes a question, because I think, again, look, after hearing the discussion, toilets are important to get included. And could I ask you that we're using money from the Heathlands Mitigation Fund? Can I ask you, have we got, and of course toilet blocks are expensive, so would we have enough money to cover that with the money that's in the Heathlands Mitigation Fund?
Through you, Chairman, my honest answer to that is I don't know, because I'm not sure that Natural England would be in the position of endorsing using the Heathland pot for that purpose. So we might have to find funding from elsewhere.
Thank you very much.
Okay, if you've sort of finished debate, I'd like to try and nail this wording, to be honest with you. I don't know what you've got there, Nicola, but you had a piece of paper. I'm wondering if we could borrow it because you reeled it out quite quickly, and I think it'd be quite good if...
Do it slowly, Madam Chairman.
Right, it's whether we need to take a few of the words out of it, because it did seem very long.
Well,
go on.
It's as to, at the moment, approval of the proposal for a binding commitment to the management plan for the country park as a preferable way of preserving the area as a public open space in perpetuity with Natural England. I think Mr. Barnes was happy with that.
And then there was something about including the parking, was there?
That's right. Sort of safeguarding the car parking, the free car parking at Stampit.
Okay, so
that's going to be added as not a separate
no,
item,
onto the end of that.
To that.
So we have one, note the progress, and then two was that. Do you want to come back on that, Nicola, and just make sure we've got it?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think I'm happy with the addition of the binding commitment and with Natural England at the end of that sentence. And then it was safeguarding the parking at the Stampit Recreation Ground. Sorry, free parking. So it's including the clause at the beginning. Yeah.
Right. Are we all happy with that? And
I'd like
you're
to propose
proposing that.
Yes,
okay.
Madam Chairman.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor James. Well, whoever put their hand up first, Councillor Jameson or Councillor Deadman, take the pick.
Thank you.
All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Right, Mr. Barnes, I think you're staying with us, are you not, for the item 7, the homelessness strategy, because unfortunately Shelley is off sick. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, both Shelley and Kathy are unwell at the moment, so I'm sort of stepping in to present this report. This is, as you'll see, the annual report on the Dorset homelessness strategy, which basically feeds back on the activities of the 6 district councils acting together to obviously help alleviate homelessness. There are some key points at section 3 of the report. We appear since 2012-13 to have had probably what I would call slightly reduced pressure on the system in terms of approaches for advice, in terms of homelessness decisions, in terms of use of the various types of accommodation. but you'll see from the various figures that is now starting to edge up again. These figures do not take into account the impact of the Homelessness Reduction Act, which came into being at the beginning of 2018. So I would expect these figures at the end of 2018-19 to be higher again. We know anecdotally and through the regular reports that have come to our committee on the homelessness service that there definitely is pressure in the system, which is one of the reasons why members approved the use of temporary accommodation budget to purchase additional units of temporary accommodation to reduce the requirement for using bed and breakfast accommodation. And I think, as Shelley and Kathy would say, it's always a struggle. There have been some notable achievements in terms of no 16 to 17-year-olds in bed and breakfast, but there are occasions where there are more families in bed and breakfast than we would like. I say that the figures very much speak for themselves, and I think without giving ourselves a pat on the back, we can collectively say that we're doing all we can to sort of manage the situation as best we can. We know what are trying circumstances. Perhaps one of the things that is still a little bit of an unknown at the moment is the full impact of the welfare changes and the move to universal credit. We know that the government have postponed or at least halted for a time some of the rollout of that, which actually might be helpful. I'm not quite sure how that applies to Dorset in full, but as I say, it's an area that isn't going to go away. We're always going to be reporting pressure on the system, and it's just how best we manage it. As we go into the two new councils, obviously these statistics will change in terms of how they're reported, and there might be a sort of a different dimension. If you take things like areas such as rough sleeping, obviously Christchurch, we don't particularly have a problem with rough sleeping, but in other parts of Dorset, including Bournemouth and Poole, they do. So, you know, there's there are issues still. So I hope I'm not trying to paint too black a picture, just a realistic one. Obviously, if members have got any questions on any of the contents of the report, I'll try and answer them as best I can, but I might get out of my depth in terms of the technical detail rather quickly, so I'll be happy to take any questions that I can't answer immediately away.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions that Mr. Barnes can try to answer? Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I'd like to ask Mr. Barnes, because when it went to resources, there's a considerable sum of money to buy a property, and that would help alleviate some of the problems here. May I ask how we get on with that, a progress report on that, please? Because it's in the green line that it's going to happen before we get demolished.
Yes, quite a good word for property, isn't it? Demolished. Yeah, we're in negotiations at the moment for the purchase of a couple of properties for use as temporary accommodation, and I think we're almost at exchange of contracts with one. We've agreed a price with another, and so we would like to get those over the line. In fact, we're pretty much certain that we'll probably get those over the line before the end of March. As you know, properties aren't cheap in this area. We haven't got a vast amount of money, so I think the way we're going at the moment, we will end up sort of spending that allocation that we've made, and every little helps at the moment, because we have been losing temporary accommodation. We've had fewer landlords that in the past wanted to offer their properties forward for TA. So we've been doing some work to try and recruit new ones in, but also the opportunity to use our capital funding and purchase properties. It will help one more family, and that's always got to be a good thing if it keeps them out of bed and breakfast.
Thank you very much for the answer.
Councillor Dedman, did you have a question?
Thank you, Chairman. I was just interested in the approach to rough sleeping, because you say quite correctly that Christchurch doesn't have a big problem, but it does have a problem compared to the rest of of rural Dorset, apart from Weymouth. But of course, it doesn't have the same problem as Bournemouth and Poole. When we are in a unitary, will the same situation apply to Christchurch as Bournemouth and Poole? I know that they probably have different ways of dealing with rough sleepers. I mean, I know they did something like, didn't they try and make the benches unsleepable on? And I'd be interested to know if you know whether or not that approach will be used in Christchurch once we're in the unitary.
Through you, Chairman, I mean, personally, I would hope not, because I think that's a particularly inhumane approach to dealing with people. They need help and advice and support. What I would hope is that our relatively small numbers won't grow. I know that when we've invoked the emergency procedures, for example, where the number of nights has been below a certain temperature, and we've gone out to try and bring people inside, the few that we have in Christchurch refuse the support, which is always concerning me, because I'm cold sitting here at the moment, and what it's like, middle of the morning, today will be nobody's business. So I know that Bournemouth and Poole do some proactive work, which I think is more positive than putting barriers on benches, and I would like to think that a new council would want to get itself off on the appropriate footing is by being inclusive and helping all of its community. I can only hope that will happen. I don't have any control over it, sadly.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Because if not, we are asked to agree and note this report. So are you all happy to agree and note? Councillor Jameson.
Happy to propose that we agree and note, or note and agree.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Geary. All those in favour with that? Yes. Some while ago now, forgot to put the microphone on, 2 representations from outside bodies. One from 4th of December, which is the Dorset Strategic Planning Forum that was in the report that you will have seen. Are there any questions or queries on that? Trish and I attended it. No? So the other one, which I'll hopefully you did get by email, I did send out, but it's on the desk, and we only went to that last week, was the Dorset Waste Partnership. And it was the last meeting of the Dorset Waste Partnership. Unfortunately, it is to be dissolved on the 31st of March, or demolished, as Councillor Hall would put it, as is Christchurch Council as well. So do you have any questions on that? And Trish and I will do our best to answer them, if you do.
No, I haven't got a question, Chairman. I just going to say I think it's very sad, because I just hope that this is going back to Dorset County Council, who I think are running down very fast. I just hope that for the past last year with them, that we do get the service we have had, which has been superb over the years.
Yeah, so I think everybody who was at this meeting from all councils was quite upset, really, that this is happening and that such a good partnership was being split up and dissolved, in fact, and the Dorset Council will now be taking over the running of this rather than actually the Dorset Waste Partnership. Some of the management positions may change. It's all sort of changing. It was very sad, wasn't it, really? And as far as Christchurch is concerned, our waste collections will for 1 year be purchased by BC, the new Christchurch and Poole Unitary, from the Dorset Council for 1 year. And after 1 year, it is proposed that Christchurch's waste collection will be merged in with the Bournemouth one, and they're proposing to do that after 1 year. So we just had to see how it goes, and I'm like you, we're all the same. We're hoping that this does not go downhill, because we have such a good service and it was, you know, it was innovative and it's done so well. And here we are having to change everything again. It was sad, wasn't it? Really? All that is left is, oh dear, the forward plan, and there isn't one. This, unfortunately, is the last meeting of Community Committee. Unless for any reason we need a special meeting, then a special meeting will be called. So I'd like to thank everybody for serving on this committee.
So, Chairman, before you wind up, I know you can't take other items of business unless they're urgent, but it is urgent because I have constantly been referred to this meeting from other meetings like resources, and it is my point about the Saxon Square lavatories, and it ties in with the rough sleeping. I know there are smiles around the table because some people have heard this before frequently. I am very unhappy that although I know there are good reasons for shutting the Saxon Square toilets, which will be having a lot of money spent on them very soon, I would very much like to see them left open at least until 8 o'clock, because the rough sleepers who do rough sleeping, they do doss down round about 8. They need a toilet facility. I'm told by various other members that, oh well, they can go to the Regent. They don't always want to go to the Regent. They're not really dressed for the Regent Theatre. And I do feel very strongly that somehow I would like it minuted that we would at least think, when we've got these Saxon Square toilets under renovation, that we keep them open for longer. I think, as the other councillor said, we're very lucky to have the toilets at all.
Yeah.
And it's just that cut-off at 6 o'clock. I mean, even if you're a shop worker and you're out of a shop or looking around the shops, 6 o'clock is a very arbitrary number. And I was told to bring it to community, so here I am bringing it to community from resources, which the councillor next
I
to
think
me
that it is
asked
not
me to do.
an agenda item, so it isn't something we can get into a debate about now. It is actually a shame you didn't bring that up while David Barnes was here, because perhaps under the homelessness issue, because then perhaps we probably could have had some further debate on it. But it's not on the agenda, but I do think that it is something perhaps you should take up with the officer direct, perhaps. I think that's best, or I'm happy to do that. Have a chat with me about it.
Yeah,
but
I will have a
it's
chat
not
with
anything
you.
we can
Yeah.
now debate
Yeah.
tonight, then,
Okay,
as far as I'm
thanks.
aware.
I just want it noted that it's come to this committee. Thank you.
Right, I think that's it. Now close the meeting, and thank you very much, everybody.